To truly understand the world you live in, you have to stop looking at it through the lens of how you want it to be and start seeing it for what it actually is. Most people spend their entire lives playing a game they don't even realize is happening. They follow the rules of fairness and niceness while wondering why they keep getting passed over for promotions, why their ideas are ignored, or why they feel invisible in a room full of people. Stay with me, because we are about to pull back the curtain on the raw mechanics of human nature. This is not about being a villain. It is about being a realist. If you do not understand the laws of power, you will always be at the mercy of those who do. Power is like gravity. You can ignore it all you want, but it is still going to pull on you. The 48 Laws of Power isn't just a book. It's a manual for survival in a world that is often competitive, deceptive, and deeply hierarchical. Today, we are going to break down the rules you simply cannot afford to ignore if you want to build a life of influence and respect. The first and perhaps most vital law is to never outshine the master. This sounds simple, but it is where most ambitious people fail. When you are talented, when you are smart, and when you have great ideas, your instinct is to show them off. You want your boss or your mentor to see how much value you bring. But you have to understand the psychology of the person above you. Every leader, no matter how confident they seem, has a deep-rooted fear of being replaced. If you make them feel insecure by showing that you are more competent or more charming than they are, they will find a way to get rid of you. Power is about making those above you feel comfortably superior. When you make them look good, they will naturally want to pull you up with them. It is a strategic move, not an act of submission. You are playing the long game. You are securing your position so that one day, you will be the one in the master's seat. You also have to learn the art of saying less than necessary. Think about the most powerful people you have ever met. Do they talk constantly? Do they explain every thought that crosses their mind? No, they are concise. When you talk too much, you inevitably say something foolish. You reveal your weaknesses, your doubts, and your hand. But when you are brief, you create an aura of mystery and authority. People find it hard to read you. They start to fill the silence with their own insecurities, giving you more information than they intended to. Silence is a tool that forces others to reveal themselves while you remain a fortress. In any negotiation, in any social setting, the person who speaks the least usually holds the most power. You want your words to have weight. You want people to lean in when you speak because they know you don't waste your breath on trivialities. Let's talk about reputation. Law 5 tells us that so much depends on reputation, so you must guard it with your life. Your reputation is the invisible shield that precedes you into every room. It does the work for you before you even open your mouth. If you are known as someone disciplined, reliable, and formidable, people will treat you with a certain level of caution and respect. But if your reputation is tarnished, if you are seen as flaky, weak, or dishonest, everything you do will be viewed through that negative lens. You have to decide what you want your brand to be and then protect it ruthlessly. One single mistake can destroy years of work. This is why you must be intentional about how the world perceives you. Don't leave your reputation to chance. Build it, refine it, and defend it against any attack. A strong reputation can make you seem more powerful than you actually are, and that perception is often more important than reality. Another law that many people find difficult to swallow is the idea of getting others to do the work for you while always taking the credit. This isn't about being a thief, it's about being a conductor. No great achievement in history was done by one person alone. Whether it's a massive corporation or a great work of art, there is always a team behind the scenes. The person at the top is the one who organized the talent and directed the energy. Your job is to find people who are better than you at specific tasks and then leverage their skills to achieve a larger vision. When the goal is reached, You are the face of that success. This is how you scale your influence. If you try to do everything yourself, you will stay small. You will burn out. Power comes from the ability to direct the efforts of others toward your own ends. It's about efficiency and the realization that your time is your most valuable asset. This brings us to the concept of making people depend on you. If you want to maintain your independence and your power, you must ensure that those around you need you for their own happiness or prosperity. If they can get what you provide from someone else, you are replaceable. But if you hold the key to a specific problem, if you possess a unique skill, or if you are the one who provides the most stability, you are safe. Never teach people enough so that they can do without you. This might sound cynical, but it is the truth of human relationships. We value what we cannot easily replace. The more you are the source of something vital, the more leverage you have in every interaction. You don't want people to love you out of kindness. You want them to need you out of necessity. Finally, you must master the art of timing. Everything in life has a rhythm. There are times to push and times to wait. There are moments to be aggressive and moments to be invisible. Most people fail because they are impatient. They try to force results before the situation is ready. But the person who understands power knows how to wait for the right moment to strike. They watch the trends, they analyze the players, and they wait for the gap to open up. When you move at the right time, you use less energy and get better results. You look like a genius when, in reality, you were just patient enough to wait for the wind to change in your favor. Mastering your emotions is the first step to mastering timing. If you are controlled by your anger or your excitement, your timing will always be off. You have to be cold and calculating about when to step onto the stage. To truly navigate the landscape of influence, you have to understand that power is often a game of appearances. Law 6 teaches us to create an air of mystery and to court attention at all costs. In a world that is crowded and noisy, being ignored is the same as being powerless. It does not matter if the attention is positive or negative in the beginning. What matters is that you are seen. Think about the individuals who dominate the headlines or the people in your office who everyone talks about. They aren't necessarily the most talented, but they are the most visible. They understand that by standing out, they create a vacuum that draws people in. You should never allow yourself to fade into the background. Whether it is through a bold style, a unique way of speaking, or an unapologetic stance on a controversial topic, you must find a way to be the flame that the moths fly toward. When you are the center of attention, you control the narrative of the room. You become the sun that everything else revolves around. This isn't about vanity. It is about establishing your presence so firmly that you cannot be overlooked when the big decisions are being made. This ties directly into the law of interacting with boldness. If you are going to do something, do it with total commitment. Timidity is dangerous. If you enter a negotiation or a project with doubt, that doubt will leak into your actions and create cracks in your foundation. People can smell hesitation from a mile away, and they will use it to crush you. But boldness has a way of hiding your deficiencies. When you move with speed and certainty, people assume you know something they don't. They give way to you. Mistakes made through boldness are easily corrected by even more boldness. But mistakes made through hesitation are harder to fix because they signal a lack of character. You have to train yourself to act as if it were impossible to fail. Even if you are terrified on the inside, your external mask must be one of absolute iron. This is how you force the world to take you seriously. You stop asking if you can enter, and you simply walk through the door as if you own the place. You also have to be careful about who you associate with. Law 10 warns us to avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. This sounds harsh, but energy is contagious. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If you surround yourself with people who are constantly in crisis, people who complain about their bad luck, and people who are perpetually miserable, their energy will eventually pull you down. These people are like drowning swimmers. They will pull you under just to get a breath of air. You cannot save everyone, and you certainly cannot build an empire while carrying the weight of others' self-inflicted drama. Instead, seek out those who are winning. Associate with people who are disciplined, focused, and moving toward a vision. Their success will rub off on you. Their mindset will become your mindset. Power is a shared frequency. If you want to rise, you have to be around people who are already flying. You have to be ruthless about who gets access to your inner circle. Your time and your mental energy are too valuable to be wasted on the infectious negativity of others. One of the most misunderstood laws is the law of crushing your enemy totally. In our modern, polite society, we are taught to seek compromise and to play fair. But in the real world of power, a wounded enemy is more dangerous than a dead one. If you leave a spark of resentment or a bit of influence remaining, they will wait for the moment you are weak, and they will strike back. This isn't necessarily about physical destruction. It is about psychological and social dominance. When you win, you must win so convincingly that the other side has no hope of recovery. You must remove their ability to threaten you in the future. If you are too merciful, you are simply giving them time to sharpen their knives. Real peace comes only when the opposition is no longer capable of being in opposition. This requires a level of coldness that most people are uncomfortable with, but it is the only way to ensure long-term stability. You play to win, not to tie. Let's look at the law of using absence to increase respect and honor. This is the law of scarcity. If you are always available, if you always answer the phone on the first ring, and if you are at every social gathering, you become common. People start to take you for granted. They think they know everything about you. But when you pull back, when you become a bit more difficult to reach, your value increases. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, but it also makes the mind grow more curious. People start to wonder what you are doing, who you are with, and why you don't need them as much as they thought. This creates a psychological pull. You want to be like the sun. People know you, are there, and they feel your warmth. But if they get too close, they get burned. By creating a bit of distance, you force others to respect your time and your presence. You become a luxury, not a necessity. Finally, you must learn to play the perfect courtier. The world is a giant court, and we are all courtiers trying to navigate the whims of those above us. This law is about the art of subtlety. You must learn to give praise without sounding like a sycophant. You must learn to deliver bad news in a way that doesn't get you blamed. You must master the poker face and the polite smile. Being a courtier is about being fluid. You don't have a rigid personality. You have a collection of masks that you wear depending on who you are talking to. You observe the power dynamics in the room, and you position yourself to be the most useful, least threatening, and most charming person there. This isn't about being fake. It is about being socially intelligent. The person who insists on being brutally honest at all times is usually the first one to be kicked out of the court. Power belongs to the one who knows when to bow and when to stand tall. To truly master the mechanics of influence, you have to understand the law of concentration. Law 23 tells us to concentrate our forces. In a world that prizes multitasking and being a jack of all trades, the most powerful people are those who find a single, rich mine and dig deep. If you scatter your energy across 10 different projects, you will be mediocre in all of them. But if you find one source of power, one key relationship, or one specific skill and pour everything you have into it, you become untouchable. Power is not about breadth, it is about depth. You want to be the person who is the absolute authority in your niche. You want to be the person who has the most intense focus in the room. When you concentrate your forces, you create a density of effort that can break through any obstacle. Most people are spread too thin, like a puddle of water that evaporates in the sun. You want to be a laser beam that can cut through steel. This requires the discipline to say no to good opportunities so that you can say yes to the great one. It means being comfortable with being misunderstood by those who don't see the long-term vision. This brings us to the law of making your accomplishments seem effortless. Law 30 tells us that your actions must seem natural and executed with ease. All the toil and sweat that went into your success must be hidden. When you show the world how hard you are working, you reveal your limitations. You show that you are struggling against the weight of the task. But when you appear to succeed without effort, you create the illusion of godlike power. People start to believe that you have a secret talent or a special connection that they lack. This creates a sense of awe. Think about the great performers or the most successful CEOs. They never look like they are panicking. They never look like they are breaking a sweat. They make the impossible look easy. This nonchalance is a powerful psychological tool. It discourages others from competing with you because they feel they can never match your natural ability. Keep your how-to to yourself. Let the world see the masterpiece, but never let them see the messy studio or the years of practice that made it possible. You also have to understand the law of playing a sucker to catch a sucker. Law 21 suggests that you should seem dumber than your mark. This is the ultimate ego trap. Most people want to be seen as the smartest person in the room. They want everyone to know how clever they are. But the person who truly understands power knows that intelligence can be a liability if it makes others defensive. If you appear slightly less intelligent, slightly more naive, or slightly more confused than you actually are, people lower their guard. They start to talk more. They start to underestimate you. And while they are feeling superior, you are gathering information. You are watching their moves. You are positioning yourself for the win. There is no greater advantage than being underestimated. It is the perfect camouflage. When the time comes to strike, they won't even see it coming because they were too busy feeling sorry for your clumsiness. Let's talk about the law of reinventing yourself. Law 25 tells us to recreate our own identity. Do not accept the roles that society foists upon you. Most people are born into a certain story, and they spend their whole lives playing that character. They are the quiet one, the funny one, or the hard worker. But the powerful individual treats their identity like a piece of clay. You have the right to mold yourself into whatever image serves your goals. You can change your name, your style, your way of speaking, and your public persona. By being the architect of your own image, you take the power of definition away from others. You become a work of art. This prevents people from being able to put you in a box. When you are constantly evolving, you remain unpredictable. And unpredictability is a key component of power. If people can predict your next move, they can control you. If they never know which version of you is going to show up, they are always on the defensive. One of the most effective laws for long-term influence is the law of playing on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. Human beings are meaning-seeking creatures. We want to belong to something bigger than ourselves. We want a cause to fight for and a leader to follow. If you can provide a clear vision, a sense of belonging, and a set of rituals, people will follow you to the ends of the earth. This isn't just for religious leaders. It applies to brands, movements, and even small teams. You have to speak in vague but inspiring terms. You have to give people a common enemy to unite against. You have to make them feel like they are part of an elite group that has the truth. When people are emotionally invested in a cause, they stop using their critical thinking skills. They become your army. This is a heavy responsibility, but it is one of the fastest ways to accumulate massive amounts of power. Finally, you must master the law of planning all the way to the end. Law 29 is where most dreams go to die. People start with great enthusiasm, but they don't think about the obstacles, the counter-moves, or the what-ifs. They get halfway there and get blindsided by a problem they didn't see coming. But the person of power plans for every contingency. They see the end goal, and then they work backward. They calculate the risks. They identify the enemies. They have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. Because they have thought through the end, they don't get panicked by temporary setbacks. They know exactly how they are going to handle every twist and turn. This level of preparation gives you a calm that others mistake for luck. It isn't luck, it is a refusal to be surprised by the world. When you plan to the end, you don't stop until you have reached the destination. You don't get distracted by side quests or emotional reactions. You stay on the path until the victory is total. To truly understand the landscape of power, you must master the law of strategic surrender. Law 22 teaches us to use the surrender tactic to transform weakness into power. Most people have an ego that is too fragile to handle the idea of losing. When they are cornered or outmatched, they fight to the bitter end, often destroying themselves in the process. But the person who understands power knows that there is no honor in a useless sacrifice. If you are facing a clearly stronger opponent, surrendering on your own terms is a brilliant move. It buys you time. It lulls the enemy into a sense of complacency. It allows you to stay close to the center of power while you gather your strength and wait for the master to stumble. Surrender is not about giving up. It is about refusing to give the enemy the satisfaction of a total victory. You yield outwardly so that you can remain unconquered inwardly. This is the ultimate passive-aggressive power move. By being the one who gives in, you often end up controlling the situation because the other person no longer sees you as a threat. This leads us into the law of keeping your hands clean. Law 26 is the hallmark of the sophisticated leader. You must never be the one seen doing the dirty work. Every successful operation requires a certain amount of ruthlessness. But if your name is attached to the mistakes, the betrayals, or the harsh decisions, your reputation will eventually rot. You must find cat's paws individuals who are willing to do the difficult or questionable work for you. Let them take the heat. Let them be the face of the unpopular decision. If the plan succeeds, you reap the rewards. If it fails, you have someone to blame. This isn't about being a coward. It is about protecting this sacred image of the leader. You want to be seen as the source of vision, kindness, and stability, while the messy mechanics of power are handled by those beneath you. This creates a distance between you and the inevitable casualties of growth, ensuring that your influence remains pure in the eyes of the public. You also have to understand the law of playing on people's fantasies. Law 32. Managing options. Law 31 tells us to get others to play with the cards you deal. The best way to control people is to give them a choice, but to make sure that both choices lead to your desired outcome. If you force someone to do something, they will resent you. But if you give them two options, both of which serve your interest, they feel like they are in control. They feel empowered because they made a decision, yet they are still moving exactly where you wanted them to go. This is a subtle form of manipulation that is used by the most successful negotiators and parents alike. It is the illusion of choice. When you control the parameters of the discussion, you have already won the argument before it even begins. You are the one who sets the menu. They are just picking the dish. Finally, we must address the law of never appearing too perfect. Law 46 is a warning for those who have reached the top. Envy is a silent killer. When you are winning, when you are healthy, and when you are successful, people will naturally feel a sense of resentment toward you. Even your friends might secretly wish for your downfall just to feel better about their own lives. To protect yourself, you must occasionally display a harmless vice or a small weakness. You must admit to a mistake or show that you, too, have struggles. This makes you more human and less of a target for envy. If you appear to be a god, people will want to pull you down to earth. But if you appear to be a lucky person who still has a few flaws, they will tolerate your success. You want to be respected, not worshipped. Worship leads to martyrdom. Respect leads to long-term influence. By strategically showing your humanity, you ensure that your power remains sustainable. To truly understand the dynamics of human interaction, you must master the law of stirring up waters to catch fish. Law 39 tells us that anger and emotion are strategically counterproductive. When you get angry, you lose your clarity. You become reactive. You give away your power because the person who can make you angry is the person who controls you. But if you can remain calm while making your opponents angry, you gain a massive advantage. You throw them off their balance. You force them to make mistakes based on emotion rather than logic. Think of it like a game of chess where your opponent is so frustrated that they begin to move their pieces without thinking. By staying detached and composed, you can watch the chaos unfold and pick your moment to strike. This requires a high level of emotional intelligence and the ability to view social interactions as a series of maneuvers rather than personal attacks. When you are the calmest person in the room, you are inevitably the most powerful. This leads us to the law of despising free lunch. Law 40 teaches us that what is offered for free is often the most dangerous. In the world of power, everything has a price. If someone offers you a gift, a favor, or a shortcut with no apparent cost, they are usually trying to put you in their debt. They are creating an invisible obligation that they will collect on later, likely at a time that is inconvenient for you. To be powerful, you must be willing to pay the full price. By paying your way, you remain independent. You owe no one anything. You keep your hands free and your conscience clear. Furthermore, being generous with your own resources is a way to signal your status. When you are the one who pays, you are the one who holds the influence. People are drawn to those who can provide, and by being the source of value rather than the seeker of it, you establish yourself as a leader. Never look for the bargain. Look for the position of strength. You also have to understand the law of avoiding stepping into a great man's shoes. Law 41 is a warning for those who follow a legend. If you take over a position from someone who is incredibly successful or charismatic, you are starting with a deficit. Everything you do will be compared to the person who came before you. If you simply try to copy them, you will always be a second-rate version of the original. To establish your own power, you must break the old mold. You must find a way to distinguish yourself instantly. This might mean changing the direction of the organization, adopting a different style, or even criticizing the previous regime. You must create your own myth so that you are not living in the shadow of the past. Power requires a fresh identity. You cannot lead effectively if the people are still looking behind you for the person who used to be there. You must be bold enough to kill the father and start your own legacy. Let's talk about the law of striking the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter. Law 42 is about the efficiency of leadership. In every group, there is a central source of influence, one person whose energy, ideas, or personality holds the whole thing together. If you try to fight every single person in a group, you will exhaust yourself. But if you identify the leader and isolate them, the entire structure will collapse. This isn't always about a literal fight. It can be about social isolation or undermining their credibility. When the leader is gone, the followers lose their direction and their unity. This is a surgical approach to conflict. By focusing your energy on the single point of failure, you can win a battle with much less effort. It requires patience to observe who the real shepherd is, as it isn't always the person with the official title. Once you find them, you focus all your resources on neutralizing their influence. Another vital rule is the law of working on the hearts and minds of others. Law 43 reminds us that you cannot force people to follow you forever. Coercion works in the short term, but it creates resentment that eventually turns into rebellion. True, lasting power comes from seduction. You must make people want to move in your direction. You do this by understanding their desires, their fears, and their psychology. You frame your goals in a way that makes them feel like they are achieving their own goals. When people feel that their interests are aligned with yours, they will follow you with enthusiasm. You have to be a master of persuasion, using both logic and emotion to weave a narrative that others want to be a part of. This is the soft power that builds empires. It is the ability to lead without ever having to raise your voice or issue a threat. Finally, we must address the law of preaching the need for change, but never reforming too much at once. Law 45 is about the human fear of the unknown. We all say we want change, but deep down, we are creatures of habit. If you try to change everything overnight, you will trigger a massive backlash. People will feel disoriented and threatened, and they will turn against you. Instead, you must make a change look like a natural evolution of the past. You use the old language and the old symbols to introduce new ideas. You move slowly, one step at a time, allowing people to get used to the new reality before moving to the next phase. You must be the voice of progress that still respects tradition. This allows you to revolutionize the system from within without ever sparking a counter-revolution. Power is a marathon, not a sprint. The person who moves too fast often trips over their own feet. To wrap your mind around the final pieces of this puzzle, you must understand the law of assuming formlessness. Law 48 is the ultimate protection for any person of influence. When you take a rigid shape, when you have a predictable routine, and when your beliefs are set in stone, you give your enemies a target to hit. You become a sitting duck for those who want to study your movements and find your weaknesses. But if you are fluid like water, you are impossible to grasp. You adapt to the environment as it changes. You shift your tactics based on the person you are dealing with. This doesn't mean you lack a core. It means you lack a visible boundary. By remaining formless, you keep your opponents in a state of constant guesswork. They cannot plan against someone they do not understand. They cannot attack a shadow. In a world that is moving faster than ever, the ability to pivot and transform is the only true security. You must be comfortable with chaos and ready to discard any strategy the moment it no longer serves your path to victory. You also have to master the law of never going past the mark you aimed for. In the heat of victory, arrogance and overconfidence often push people to go too far. They win the battle and then, fueled by adrenaline, they keep pushing until they trigger a reaction from those they have defeated. Law 47 warns us that in victory, you must know when to stop. The moment of triumph is often the moment of greatest peril because it is when your guard is lowest and your ego is highest. A wise leader sets a clear goal, and once that goal is reached, they pull back to consolidate their gains. They don't let greed or emotion drive them into a territory they cannot hold. By stopping at the right time, you preserve your strength, and you avoid creating unnecessary enemies who are driven by the desperation of being pushed too far. Success is about precision, not excess. Consider the law of being royal in your own fashion. Law 34 tells us that the way you carry yourself often determines how you are treated. If you act like a servant, the world will treat you like one. If you are hesitant, apologetic, and small, you are inviting people to overlook you. But if you carry yourself with a quiet dignity, as if you are destined for greatness, people will naturally begin to believe it. This isn't about being loud or boastful. It is about a deep, internal conviction of your own value. When you respect yourself at a fundamental level, it radiates through your posture, your tone, and your decisions. You set the price for your own life, and the world will pay it. You must act like a king to be treated like one. This internal sovereignty is the root of all external power. We must also look at the law of avoiding the snare of gratitude. Most people make the mistake of appealing to people's past kindness or their sense of obligation. But Law 13 tells us that if you need help, you must appeal to people's self-interest. Humans are naturally selfish creatures. If you remind someone of a favor you did for them 3 years ago, they will feel guilty and resentful. But if you show them how helping you today will benefit them tomorrow, they will move mountains for you. You must frame every request in a way that makes the other person see the win for themselves. This is how you build alliances that actually last. When a relationship is built on mutual benefit rather than moral debt, it is much more stable and productive. The final realization of the 48 laws is that power is not a destination. It is a continuous process of observation and adjustment. It requires you to be a student of human nature every single day. You have to watch the small shifts in the room, the hidden motives behind people's words, and the slow changes in the cultural tide. You cannot afford to be naive. You cannot afford to believe that the world is a simple place where the good guys always win. Just because they are good. The world is a complex, beautiful, and sometimes brutal arena where those who understand the rules have the freedom to create their own destiny. By embracing these laws, you aren't becoming a different person. You are becoming a more capable version of yourself. You are gaining the tools to protect your vision, to support those you care about, and to build something that actually lasts. As you move forward, remember that the most powerful thing you can do is to remain a mystery to the crowd while being crystal clear to yourself. Your internal world must be a place of absolute honesty and discipline. You use the laws of power as a shield and a map, but the fuel for your journey must come from a purpose that is deeper than just the accumulation of influence. When you combine a strong internal why with a sophisticated understanding of the how, you become an unstoppable force. The world is waiting for those who dare to see it as it is and the strength to lead it where it needs to go. Take these rules, study them, and use them to build the life you deserve. The game is already playing. It is time for you to start winning.